Hello and welcome to this week's weekly drive. And I'm really excited to be here today. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Brenda Dempsey. I'm the founder and CEO of Brilliance Publishing. And the weekly drive is all about writing your book. The weekly drive focuses on aspects of writing. Some you may think about and some you may not have thought about. But if you want to write a brilliant book that's quality, that's going to raise your profile and see you as an authority within your field, then you better make sure that you pay attention to what we're about to share, because these are the elements that make a great and brilliant book for you and your business, so that you can attract clients, so you can raise your authority, so that you can be the go-to expert in your field. Many, many, many more reasons besides those. So this week, we're talking about research. Wow. So quite often, authors think, I'm going to write a book about what I know and what I do. And that's great. And, I would say, fabulous. First port of call is to brain dump everything you know about your business, about the themes that are important to you, the values that drive you, and get it all on a paper. And then we can play about with it to see exactly what you need and what you can discard. But research is very much a part of that. And that might even mean researching your own story. And just to let you know, here at BBP, we do that through the golden thread. That's something that all our authors engage in, and absolutely it's transformative. But today we're just going to tap into a little bit of that so you can understand what we mean by research. So let's get started. Let me share the screen. So here we go. Proven pages, the art of authorial research in writing. So where are we going to begin? Let me see if I can make this full size of the screen. And of course, you just get it down. Here we go. So let's open it. Okay, we're doing it this way today. It looks like it. Okay, so research is the compass that guides the narrative journey, that enriches your stories with authenticity, depth, and an undeniable connection to the human experience. So let me explain a wee bit more than that. So you really need to know who you are from the inside out. You need to be able to identify those stories that make a point, identify the stories where the learning of those stories, whether it's adversity or whether it's favorable, whatever it is for you, that makes a point in what you believe in and what you teach in your business, whether you're a coach, whether you're a therapist, whether you're a business owner, a speaker, whatever it is, you need to be aware of those elements of your life. It might be some, oh, I won't say that because I think we're going to come on to that later, actually. So, and what happens is when you share a part of you and you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you will enrich what you have to say. And what that does, it builds rapport with your reader, with your clients, and it shows great authenticity. Now, the books that absolutely do amazingly well are books where authenticity by the author is clear to see. They share all their failures, they share all their shortcomings, because we have to see that as a possibility and an opportunity for growth, for moving forward. So therefore we look to the learning. And that's what we do in the golden thread. We identify all the elements of your life, good and bad, and then we do that. But you will, without having to go through that whole process, be able to, I'm sure, identify 2 or 3 stories that really, really drive who you are today. So for example, let me give you one from my childhood. When I was 10, I saw on the TV pictures of Biafran children, very pot-bellied, There was a war going on and they were starving. And as a 10-year-old, I was extremely moved by that. And because I was emotionally moved, I then decided I had to do something about that. What could a 10-year-old do? Well, I'm going to tell you what this 10-year-old did. I raised money through what we called back then in the 60s a jumble sale. So that was selling bric-a-brac, clothes that you no longer wore, and people would buy them. You know, a lot of people didn't have a lot of money, so jumble sales were a big thing in the 60s in Clydebank, where I was from. So I did that against my mother's better judgment. She went, no, you're not doing that. But of course, this why was bigger than my mother and me, and I always did what I was told. So this was really me taking a risk and going against my mother. Wow, that was huge. Anyway, long story short, I raised the equivalent of a week's wages back in 1967, 68. I can't remember exactly. It was one of those years anyway. So could have been 68. And so therefore, I can use that story in what I do now as a publisher, as a coach, as a speaker, to illustrate a mindset of I can, to illustrate emotional movement in action, what you're going to do, taking risk, maybe going against other people's judgment, because the why is bigger than yourself. So this is why we start on the inside, you know. And of course, when we tell such stories, we are going to resonate with that human aspect of our experience. So therefore, you've seen already that research begins with yourself. So it's about self-awareness, knowing that, being conscious of the stories and why it's that story and what was the learning and how does that learning impact on who you are. So as we've said previously, it's about enhancing your authenticity. So important, you know, and there's different ways of doing that research into yourself. You can speak to other family members who will have a different perspective on it than your own perspective. You can look at photographs. You can, maybe you've kept a diary. Any of these ways, go back and see, where's my evidence of what I believe in? Where's the evidence that showed that you did X, Y, and Z? Where's the evidence that it's forged who you are today? And speaking to other members of your family is a great way, and that's very important. And we'll probably talk about that in a second. Oh, I have to remember, I don't know why it's not going on to that. Okay, so when you do research, you can find other people's thought processes and also what happened at the time. So you could look at, let's say, I remember 1970, 71, we had a tremendous storm that blew off roofs of massive buildings. It was so strong. So therefore, if I want to talk about that time, I can go back and look at paper cuttings of the day. I could go back maybe and listen to news stories. I could maybe speak to people who I grew up with at that time. What was their recollection? And you really then get a full story that makes it believable. Look at what's happening today in the world. And we've got news reporters all over the world. It wasn't like that back in the 60s. So therefore, we get eyewitness accounts. We actually can be there when things happen right in front of our eyes. That's such a power of the media today. So there we go. We've talked about researching historical context of a specific time or period. Now, whether that's fiction or non-fiction, but if you're writing a fiction novel set in, I don't know, the 1700s, you really have to go and do your research about what was social norms back then, what was the fashion, what did people think, was it a patriarchal society, what was going on, what were the politics of the day, what happened in relationships in the day, depending what it is you're going to write about. It's the same if you're non-fiction, you might need to go back in history to write about a particular subject. So you want to research what people were saying of the day and how has thought processes changed. What are the thought leaders saying today that was so different from 200-300 years ago? You know, if I think of Black Lives Matter, there's a great if you're writing a book around that, then, you know, the Windrush, all of these, you can go and find great research to back up your own beliefs and your own thoughts. That is what will raise your credibility. And last week we spoke about referencing. So we want to reference these, but we want to use them and mix them in and blend them with your own thinking and your own beliefs based on experiences, etc. So let's look at some starting points. We've touched on this already, but let's just go back and let's reinforce it. So you might need to go back far into your childhood. I gave you a story about my childhood, that is really the start of my I can mindset. I can do it, watch me. And then you take action, you do it. So you achieve something quite momentous. You might go back into your 20s, maybe something happened in your 20s. I can go back to my 30s when I accomplished a degree despite being homeless with 4 children. Massive story. Again, reinforces the I can mindset. So you can start to see that something that is a 10-year-old and something that's a mid-30-year-old absolutely is reinforcing that whole belief that I can do something when I put my mind to it. And you will have similar beliefs and convictions to who you are, which allows you then to strongly commit to doing something. So I'd committed to doing my degree. I had an absolute hurricane, typhoon, or tsunami in the middle of it, but didn't stop me getting that degree, because that degree became a why. So you have to look at what's happened in your life. It doesn't need to always be something adverse. So I can look to the day that I got that degree. I was walking on air. No one would ever be able to take away the fact that I held that degree in my hand. In fact, it's quite close by. I don't know where I've put it now. Anyway, so it's very important that you look to personal experiences. Maybe you've observed something. Maybe you observed a march or something like that. Maybe it's something you believe in or you don't believe in. You know, so there's always events in your life that help you learn and cement your self-belief. And of course, when you can find these stories, it also helps you to build foundations of content that's relatable, what you're writing about. You have to put that human aspect in, or you create a soulless book. And here at BBP, we create books with soul. So make sure what you're saying has got part of you in it. It's got part of famous people. It's got part of famous events in it. It's got metaphor in it. All these things are human connections that help your reader and potential clients resonate with you. So I think we're just we're kind of going over here again. I think I'm jumping ahead. So look at all the emotions. So label all the emotions that you felt at that time as well. And maybe you can, instead of telling the emotion, you can show the emotion, like your heart was beating, it was coming out of your mouth, you know, so we know how you're feeling with that description of the emotion. You don't have to say I was excited or I was nervous. You can create an imagery that your reader can imagine for themselves without you telling them. So again, back to the childhood, look at what is the backstory. So this is both, again, fiction, non-fiction, develop characters. So you might have case studies if it's non-fiction you're writing about, and you'll talk about that case study, that person and their traits and their commitment and what they achieved and why they achieved it, and what was the benefits and what did they learn and how's it impacted their life. Everything has got it's got so many facets that you can decide and choose which one that you want to talk about. And of course, when we make it relatable and we use human experiences, that's going to connect with the reader well more. And use anecdotal evidence, because we can draw an inspiration from that and the people we meet, the circumstances that we meet along the way, you know. So for example, it could be holidays. You've gone on a holiday and you've bumped into someone who lives round the street from you. People have gone all the way to Australia and things like that have happened. So what did that tell you? How did that shape your thinking and what you believe in about how we're all connected? Maybe you're writing a book about the human spirit's connected. We're all connected. You know, we can get into the realms of quantum physics and all of that as well, if we're writing something from a more spiritual point of view. So what is the relationships? If you're writing a character, again, in a fictional book, you can base it on a relationship and the experiences you've had. Again, you can go and speak to people who've had that type of relationship and listen to what they're saying and use some of that in your book. Fiction is, yeah, it's imaginative, it's made up, but actually a lot of fiction's based on, we call them faction. It's a mixture of fiction and fact, you know. If you look at Dan Brown and his books, you know, oh my goodness, I've read them all. I can't even think of one right now. But he you know, he has a lot of Rome and Italy in his books, you know, the Da Vinci Code, and Demons and Angels. He takes a whole year and travels the world finding his evidence, and then he can write about it in his books, you know. Like all these secret societies and things like that, you know, the Rose Chapel in Edinburgh. So he's been there, so he can actually take pictures, be there, feel and sense it, and describe that in his books. So look at, where are you getting your research from? You want to get as wide a base as possible. We've talked about a few already, so let's bring all of that and focus it in. So of course you can explore books. You'll get a lot from books. Maybe you've got, so for example, if I'm talking about emotional intelligence, I'm going to go to Daniel Goleman's book sitting on my shelf. Emotional Intelligence, as the book's called, and I might want to write a bit about self-awareness. So I'll go and refresh my memory. I've studied this for years, but I still will go back and refresh my memory because I want a specific quote. I don't remember them all in my head. I don't need to. I've got a book. I've got Google. You know, we don't need to carry out everything in our head at the time because we're writing. It's not like we're doing a speech. So therefore, find books that's got credible expertise in it, experts, and use that. I have books that's got metaphor. So when I want to describe maybe making good choices, I can go to my metaphor books and I can find the metaphor that will help, because metaphors are another important aspect of storytelling that I would encourage you to use in your writing. Of course, articles, you might go to journals online. You might go to scientific journals, business journals, what's universities saying, and make sure that they're credible sources, not just blogs are important, and that's what we're going to say about credible online sources. If you use a blog, make sure it comes from a credible resource and make sure you reference it and know that it's a credible online resource. So you might use something like, if you're doing an entrepreneurial book, Success Magazine. So that's a highly noted and got great credibility in the field, and you might want to use that. You might want to use, oh my goodness, my brain's gone again. Maybe I should write these things down, but I speak from my heart. So find those credible online sources. Maybe there's been studies done. So Harvard, for example, I often look to Harvard University, might look at London, I might look at Warwick, Winchester, maybe Glasgow, Edinburgh, St Andrews. I will go to a university that I know has got a great reputation based on that and look at what they're saying and include that in. Of course, that's going to give you great credibility that you're using academic referencing in what you're writing about. So make sure you have a comprehensive research. So don't just use one source, use a number of sources. If you're talking about mindset, I would suggest you use 3 to 4, maybe 5 even, but definitely no less than 3 talking about that. So you would have Carol Dweck in there. You would have maybe some other university and some other guru who talks about mindset in the world of entrepreneurial or psychology. You might have, I use Psychology Today quite a lot in my research. So you will find that you could use mind if you're talking about mental health and well-being. Very important. Very important that you look at that. So you've got some books, you've got articles, you've got blogs, you've got interviews. You might watch an interview on YouTube somewhere. You might listen to a podcast. All of these different variations will give you greater credibility in what you're writing about, and you'll feel stronger and more confident about it too. And of course, it will help you grow your mindset and your perspectives. So there you go. Referencing scholarly articles to add depth to your academic discussion within, even when it's non-fiction, fiction, doesn't matter. Any writing, you can use either of these, but you want to add academic discourse into it because they're the thought leaders. Diverse resources. So we've already talked about interviews, individuals, and relevant knowledge. You might conduct your own series of interviews. So for example, I was interviewed the other day by a divorce lawyer, and because I've been divorced in my life, she wanted my perspective. My perspective is like over 20 years ago, so maybe different from the perspective of someone who's currently going through divorce right now. I've got 20 years length of time, so therefore my emotions around it might not be as raw than somebody who's currently going through it right now. So you want to get the insights from these professionals and individuals, particularly with expertise in that field. So I love to interview experts, and I have the expert's voice and the author's voice. I have a podcast, Brilliance Today. We have a magazine. So I have lots and lots of platforms that can gather expert opinion, people who they've got maybe 3 and 4 degrees, you know, they're maybe a lawyer, they're absolute experts in their field, and they are rocking it, and their wisdom is absolutely paramount, and they might be professors in universities. So being able to have these conversations and get insight from these people is absolutely gold to your writing. So there we go. Interviewing a chef for accurate culinary descriptions in a food-themed novel. We're obviously a wee bit here on fiction, but it would apply to non-fiction too. So, for example, I have an author, Anne Archie, who talks about food and nutrition. So she has interviewed people in that field who studied it, university, they teach it, they write about it. They're experts in the field. So she's going to raise her own profile by associating herself with that. So interviewing these people is an absolute game changer. So let's look at digging deeper. We want some depth to what we're writing, or it could just be any book written by anybody. No, remember, you're unique, and remember, you're writing a brilliant book. So therefore, knowing all of this is crucial. Awakened awareness to what you need to do in order to write a brilliant book. So I see lots of books that have not got any of this in it. They're not a brilliant book. So therefore, have they got credibility? Probably not. Probably not. Not by people who really want to promote them. Like the media would be one group of people, like maybe being asked to speak at a university, for example. That happens a lot with authors. They're asked to come along and speak because they might not have a degree, they might not have a doctorate in a subject, but they've studied it for 20 years and they've got a book. So therefore, that puts them in a different light, and certainly on a higher profile than someone who writes a book and hasn't bothered to dig deep. So you want to incorporate surprising elements. So here we can see Holi, which is an Indian festival. We're going into Diwali actually in a couple of days. And so therefore you might want to look from a cultural point of view at what you're talking about. So let's go back to mindset, because that's a big thing of mine. So what's the mindset of someone who lives in the UK compared to someone who lives in America, compared to someone who lives in Australia, India, Malaysia, Singapore? Are all our mindsets the same? Or what's the difference? Is that important into what you're trying to say as a thought leader in your book? Or if you're having a story all about folly, you might want to go and research that and find out and speak to people who actually have been part of that. Maybe you might even want to do that yourself. I think it's around March. I know next year it's around March. So unearth unique insights from unconventional sources. So here, another thing that you want to think about, and this is something that's been in my mind recently, and that's getting different perspectives. So here we could have a young person. Why not ask a young person what they think? I've got a 9-year-old granddaughter. Oh my God, her brain is amazing. And she would be more than happy to give you her opinion on a number of subjects, from science to geography to animals to the environment to what sport to what makes a 9-year-old tick, and to using our more elderly community members. You know, so if you really want to know a lot about the war, why not speak to a veteran? Now, we've not got many veterans left from the Second World War. Time's marching on. So getting these stories and these insights are so invaluable, because in another 20 years they will not be around, maybe even 10. So yeah, so if I think of my own partner's father, he's 98 and he was in the Second World War, so he's not going to be around much longer. So therefore it's important, if you want these perspectives, get them now, get the wisdom and get the new thinking. That will help you create thought leadership for the next generation. Also, you can put lesser known facts and something that's got a bit of a twist, something that you might read something and it might just spark another idea from the research that they've not discussed. And this is what's brilliant about reading things and doing research and speaking to people, because it will spark something in you and you think, oh, they've not thought about that. Oh, I could write about this. You know, there'll be something missing. There's always something missing. There's always little holes here and there. We can't plug them all, unfortunately. It's just the way we are. And when you've got a bit of intrigue and a bit of, oh, I didn't know that, you know, keep the reader on the toes. It makes your book a page turner. So therefore, try and find something that's a bit more obscure that you can add. So here we go. Here's an example. Introduce a plot twist based on a rare historical event to create suspense in a mystery novel, but also in, if it's non-fiction, in that as well. You can employ these strategies in any form of writing. That makes good writing. So we've talked about this already, so I'm not going to go on that. Okay, although we haven't talked about this. So look at to folklore and mythical elements into a fantasy story. And you can even use that if you're trying to make a point in a non-fiction. You know, you could say the story of the tortoise and the hare. Let's use that. You know, how does that relate to life? There's always morals, isn't there? So therefore, for me, for authors, let me just look at that. So as an author, you know, a lot of people want immediate success. They want to sell 10,000 books in the first week that their book's published. Well, unless you're J.K. Rowling or Dan Brown, any of these, Stephen King and any of these other great, or maybe even Stephen Bartlett, if we look to his books just come out, then you know it's not quite going to happen, you know. So and so therefore becoming an author should be about the long game and not the short win, because it's what will happen over time with your book. Just like Stephen Covey's book, which is, I think, could be 40-year-old now, and certainly Emotional Intelligence. It was quite a new book out in the 90s. So it's important that we can compare these stories to what's happening in the thinking, because these historical elements, whether it's folklore or mythical, still we relate to them. So when you're thinking about your book, make sure you set some research goals, what you're going to research. Don't put too much down at any one time. Stick to 3 goals at any one time. Achieve 2, add another one if you need to. And then, because you need to balance your achievement with what it is you're trying to achieve. Because if you put all the goals out at once, you're going to be overwhelmed. Your progress, you're not going to do it, so it's going to be slow. Whereas if you just set yourself a goal each week and you do it, you'll start to see that progress and it will be amazing. And you will be absolutely gobsmacked at how fast you're getting through it. So make sure you do research and use your own stories, your own beliefs, your own philosophy, and make sure that the research you're doing, you use it to enrich your storytelling process. And don't allow it to hold you back from the progress that you're wanting to make. The thing is, just you just need to refer to it. You don't need to write about it. You just need to say things like, in the recent research undertaken by Harvard University into procrastination in entrepreneurs, and then you can just say what it is, and you can say, whereas the evidence that I've gleaned from my interview with, or from the work that I've been doing, does it reflect what they're saying, or have you shown that actually they've missed a trick? So that kind of thing. So you don't need to go into great detail. So make sure, this is most important when you're writing, get a timetable and put yourself down a time to write. So for me, I write in the mornings. I cannot write in the afternoons or evening, too tired in the evening. And during the day, I'm so busy, I don't get time. So I get up maybe 5 o'clock in the morning and I'll write for 3 hours. I might write an hour, I might write 2, depends what it is I'm writing. So allocate, know when it is you can write. Some people like writing in the evening, but try and stick to it as much as possible. But nothing should be put you into a straitjacket. You need to have flexibility. So if you know that you're traveling, you go, okay, when I'm on the train, I might do a bit of writing. You just need to know where you think best and where you can do it. So it's about your own self-awareness. Want community support? That's where you want to join the Book Brilliance tribe. And because when you're amongst like-minded people who are going through the same journey as you, it's really great to get their insights, and you can support each other along the way, and get the tips and guidance from successful authorship. So there we have it. So that's all about research. Bet you didn't know that there was so much to research. If you've done a degree, you'll have some insight, but just make sure you do it enough. You don't need to make it a career, but just do enough. Know your points and say, right, what research do I need? I'm going to look at America. Harvard is one of the world-class universities. That's good. You might look at Oxford. You could look at, find somewhere that does the studies based on what you're writing about. And if you get any Q&A, please put it below this video and let's get a conversation going. And until the next time, this is Brenda saying, be brilliant, much love, and to the pip, and keep researching, keep learning. There we go, I should have stopped that there, shouldn't I? See you next week.